Hi, I'm Jim Shaw, still here at the Buckman Tavern in Lexington Center. We really do appreciate the support we're getting from the Lexington Historical Society. I'm here with Joe Lahiff, Lexington resident, lifelong Lexington resident, who is seeking a seat in the legislature, the 15th Middlesex District. And we're pleased to have you with us.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I want to just say, hold on, I wrote a couple of things about you, and I want to make sure we say them. That you are a former chair of the Minuteman Regional High School School Council.
That's correct.
Not the committee, but the council.
Yep.
And you can explain that a little bit later. You're a former member of the Lexington Town Meeting, and a former Lexington police detective and president of the police union.
Correct.
I'm sure that puts you in a position to do some negotiating and help you learn how to sort of interact with public policy and all of that. So let me ask you first off, why are you running, Joe? I mean, there are a lot of candidates running. You know, it's been 24 years since we've turned the seat over and it's been open, sort of, you know, obviously it was something you were very excited about. But tell me a little bit why are you running and why should people vote for you?
I absolutely have an answer to that question, but I want to first start off by definitely commenting on where we are. This is a momentous thing for me, being a Lexington resident and being in Buckman Tavern and actually experiencing this with you and also a lifelong Lexington resident, but the history that's here and my career as a police officer, knowing this place and watching it every April 19th with the parade and the battle green and the battle that takes place between the British and the Minutemen. And I have to tell you something before we start. I figured out a centuries-old riddle of where the first shot came from. And I did it standing there doing a detail one April 19th, watching the battle take place. And they're all lined up on the battleground, ready to go, and this, you know, facing each other off, and nobody's firing. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the Buckman Tavern window upstairs open, and a musket come out. And bam, the war was on.
The war was
the
on.
war was on.
So it was the guy upstairs.
It was somebody upstairs in the Buckman Tavern. I don't know if it was 250 years ago, if that's the way it was, but that's the way it was that year when I was working the detail. And I'll tell you something, every year, this year and including next year, I still root for the Minutemen.
You do.
I still root for the Minutemen.
One day, we can only hope.
One day, we can only hope. But anyways, thank you for the Lexington Historical Society for having me here and for allowing me to use this and meet with you, and thank you for conducting this. Running, and why I'm running, it's an easy answer for me, and it's an answer that I hope has a bit of a warm engendered spirit to it. It's something I've wanted my entire life. It's something that's been in me since I can remember being young. And I have to give you a little bit of a history to understand that answer better. I joined the police department when I was 18 years old. I graduated in June of 1986. The police department hired me in October of 86. So I grew up in this town. I grew up at the police department. I grew up immersed in what Lexington was. At 22 or 23, I got elected as vice president of the police union. And shortly thereafter, I got elected as president of the police union. That happened to be 1994. It was the same year Jay Kaufman was running for his first seat at state rep. I watched the entire process with awe. Absolutely watched him campaign, watched the process play out, loved every minute of it, enjoyed watching how he campaigned, enjoyed watching him do the job. As a union president for the next 8 years, I was on Beacon Hill regularly. I was up there lobbying for different issues for police officers or for looking to talk to him and ask questions about bills that might be coming down affecting general laws. And he was great to me. Jay was absolutely fantastic to me, always gave me his time. From being a president of the union, I got elected to the National Executive Board, our 50,000-man union for the IBPO. I served a 4-year term as a member of the National Executive Board and continued to work on Beacon Hill regularly, negotiating with lobbyists up there and asking them to push forward legislation, working with state reps, working with senators, and knew in my heart, this is where I want to be. I'm good at it. I'm good at consensus building. I was good as a union person at getting guys on board with an initiative and pushing it forward. I was excellent. I excelled at meeting with town representatives, meeting with the town manager, meeting with the selectmen, and figuring out this is what the police officers are looking for. What are you looking for? And how do we find that middle ground? That talent existed in me. I never ran against Jay because I thought he was doing a really nice job. I had a young family, raised my young family. My youngest is now 19. When Jay announced he was retiring, it was a no-brainer. I was instantly in. I knew, in fact, I got a phone call from a very good friend If you don't mind, if I could tell a very quick story, I promise I'll wrap it up.
Yep, we have only so much time, but go ahead.
All right. I got a call from a friend one evening. Jay Kaufman just announced he's retiring. And I was with a group of friends, and I looked around at my group of friends, and I blurted out, Jay Kaufman's retiring. I'm going to run for state rep. And they all promptly ignored me. Went back to what they were doing, ignored me, had no interest whatsoever. Well, I was serious. I picked up the phone, started dialing numbers of people that I knew would help me get my name into the circle and put me out there, somebody interested, get me off to a good start. Got everything I wanted, called a bunch of people, got the help I needed in place, started the ball rolling, went home just thrilled. Woke up the next morning and realized I hadn't told my wife. I was there for an hour sitting on the couch waiting for her to come down, terrified. I finally had told Kelly, I said, honey, I got to tell you something. I'm running for state rep. She looked at me and said, it's in you. It's you. Go get it. It's something you've always wanted to do it.
Nice, nice. Well, we're glad you're out there and running. I went on your website, as I have with some of the other candidates, just to look at some of your positions and some of the things that you're sort of highlighting. And I imagine this is sort of a little bit of a roadmap for your campaign. And you talk about education, healthcare, women's rights. Mm-hmm. But I did want to start with education because you do punctuate right here. I do not support charter schools. I mean, you say it as clear as day, and that's something I always admire about you. There's people know where you stand. You make your positions clear. So in terms of education, you talked about safe school initiatives. Here, you also, I was interested in how you see support for what kind of things you'll do to support increased funding for education in Lexington, and then why are you against charter schools? I know why, but I want you to tell me why.
Well, I don't think they're fair. There are a couple of reasons, and one of them came to light to me while I was running in a conversation, and I've loved this entire process for really wanting the job, but because I'm learning so much. I'm learning every single day about issues that I really came into this not knowing a lot about. Charter schools was one of them. School safety is a huge thing to me. I'll get back to charter schools in a minute, kind of segue into it. School safety is huge to me. As a part of my career, as a part of being a detective, I was assigned for 5 years as a school resource officer. I spent 5 years working with the most amazing group of educators, administrators, support staff, guidance counselors, parents. It was fantastic. I spent every day in the school, not in a uniform, in a soft, what they call the soft uniform. Right. I would wear a pullover with the word police on top of it. Was armed, which is an issue in today's climate. I recognize having guns in schools is an issue. A police officer with an undercover outfit and well able to protect his firearm, I believe, is an asset to the school. Mm-hmm. And if we had more time, I'd go into that in detail, sure. But I believe it firmly. But anyways, the school principal, then Principal Amara, accepted me with both open arms and wanted me involved in his school, recognized that I wanted to help keep it safe, and helped me understand that a school resource officer is not necessarily a law enforcement officer. There are two distinct roles that are held by teachers and by law enforcement. In law enforcement, you're law enforcement officers. Teachers are caretakers. A school resource officer is designed to bridge that gap. And when you sign on as a school resource officer, you have to accept, I'm no longer here necessarily to enforce laws. I'm here to take care of children. Mm-hmm. And assuming you get the right person and the right training and the right support staff for that officer, you can keep that school safe. Mm-hmm. I spent more time in the cafeteria dealing with kids, eradicating bullying, making sure drugs never made it onto campus, dealing with issues that go so far beyond what a math teacher can deal with, or so far beyond what even a guidance counselor can deal with. Mm-hmm. Guidance counselors may be looking at a kid saying, how's your course load? Where are you looking to go to college? Where are you looking to go for whatever? A police officer, being a caretaker, but having that background, looks at a kid differently and says, geez, I'm seeing some things that are concerning to me. And you go and you access the support staff. If they have them, you go to a school psychiatrist. You go to the professors. You go to the school council. You say, this kid is concerning me. Will you take a closer look? And I might see something in a kid that they wouldn't. A math teacher's looking to see if you did your math homework. They're not looking to see necessarily if something's going on behind the scenes. So I found it invaluable. And I was so proud. When I came in as a school resource officer, then President Bill Clinton had given a $100 million grant to school resource officer programs to fund them nationwide. And Lexington took advantage of that. We took advantage of a $75,000 a year grant to put school resource officers into schools, and I was a part of that program, and think it was just absolutely money well spent.
You went on to become a nationally certified instructor.
I did. I took it as far as I could go. School resource officers have many levels, and it's called a practitioner, a national practitioner. In order to do that, you have to receive training. You have to be there for 3 years. You have to go to in-service training, and a lot of different aspects of being an educator. You really become a caretaker. I got to say,
And
for
you
those
train
5 years,
other school resources officers from around the country.
and I'm still certified to do that. Yeah, it's a great program.
And you stay in touch with some of the kids even now.
I do. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, it was best.
They called you 5-0 Joe.
They
as I
called me
recall.
5-0 Joe, yeah, and I was terrified of what nickname I might get, because sometimes students can give you harsh nicknames, but I
Right.
loved 5-0
But it was
Joe.
important to you to build a relationship with these kids so they would learn to trust you, and so it was a nurturing environment.
That's correct. And even then, taking that role into something that I'm expecting to find at the State House, there's not always 100% agreement on which way to go. You sit at a table talking about one kid, but there may be 15 or 20 support staff there. Guidance and dean's office and principal's office and teachers and IEPs. If they come into play, you're going to have all kinds of support staff there. And developing consensus is something that you either have as an ability or you don't. There are people who will pound their fists and scream until they get what they want, and I'm not one of those.
Right.
I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to hear what you have to say. It is hard to say no to me. I have to say it's hard to say no to me. Typically, if I've done my homework and I have my tenacity built up and set on getting something, I'm going to get it. And that's what I think I'm going to bring most to the State House.
Well, you talk a little bit about women's rights, which is interesting because I didn't see that on some of the other websites.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, we're talking about a Supreme Court justice where a nomination process where the Roe versus Wade sort of weighs in the balance. So state legislatures have to be sort of in a position to deal with the fallout from something like that. And it says here, I support a woman's right to choose. So talk a little bit about that, ending gender discrimination, domestic violence protections that you want to
Sure.
move forward, and woman's right to choose.
Yeah, that's a near and dear one to me, and I'm a bit different when it comes to that particular. I have a different viewpoint when it comes to that particular bill. I am 100% behind a woman's right to choose, and I say that having been adopted by my parents. At one point, my biological mother made the decision to either have me or not have me. And she decided to have me, put me up for adoption, and my parents adopted me. I love them. They're the greatest people I've ever met. They did me the greatest kindness you could ever do to somebody. They adopted me. Saying that as an adopted person, having seen what women go through all my life, whether it was in school with women who had young pregnancies and didn't know which way to turn, or any number of different reasons, I firmly believe a woman is the best dictator of what happens to her body, and I want to support her in her ability to make whatever choice she makes. I want to make sure she's got all the available information possible and any supports that she can get. It's a tough decision. It can be a very tough decision, but saying that as an adopted person, I think should be a kind of a. If you have my support on it, you have the support of somebody that was adopted, and that should mean a little bit extra.
Right.
It's from the heart.
Right.
And domestic violence is just huge to me. I spent so many years as a uniformed police officer going to different houses and dealing with women who were being abused. And there's nothing more crushing to an entire family. Nothing. In fact, I found as a school resource officer many times this kid would come into school and I'd see in the cafeteria a different expression on their face than normal. And there were countless occasions where kids would come to my office and say, Officer Joe, Mom's getting hit by Dad. I don't know what to do with it. That's not a math issue.
Right.
That's not a science issue. It's barely a guidance counselor issue.
Right.
I certainly went to the guidance counselors for assistance and went to the school psychiatrist for assistance. But at Minuteman, there are 16 different towns that are considered in district, and 42 total towns at the time were sending kids there.
Right.
This was happening in Lincoln. Lexington schools have very little jurisdiction there. I didn't. But because of what happened with our juvenile diversion program, and I'd love to speak on that if we have time.
I really do want you to speak on juvenile diversion.
I was able to, through juvenile diversion, which is a program that Martha Coakley had really spearheaded way back in the early days, and it was built on by Sean Garbley with his restorative justice. What a great bill, by the way. Absolutely loved that bill. But in talking about juvenile diversion, it allowed the school resource officers to partner with local law enforcement from other communities. For Minutemen, it meant I got to go to 16 different towns and meet with the prosecutors from those towns, meet with other school resource officers, meet with the district attorneys that were doing the work at the varying courthouses, and come up with ways of keeping a record away from the kid, not to label them with a record at 16 years old that followed them for the rest of their lives, but to make the issue more a learning experience. And it involved parents. It involved the kid accepting some responsibility. It involved the school buying into it. It was a magical program, and in its base, it still exists. Whether or not we have the resources right now as law enforcement, not just locally where I think we've got issues, but statewide where I think we've got staffing issues. I think it's probably a program that needs to be revisited, needs to be refunded, and needs to be built upon, because that's where you save lives.
You would be dedicated to working with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think school violence starts when you start to trim off some of those core support systems, and you start having kids fall through these cracks, and that's when the worst starts to happen. So making that funding available is something that I'd work very hard to get, and like to see not only what Sean's doing expanded upon, but see what still exists at the juvenile diversion level and expand on that.
Legislatively speaking, you know, you're no stranger to the impact of tourism. I have asked this the other candidates. We talk about economic development downtown. We talk about economic development statewide. Tourism is a big part. You know, they say it's the third largest industry in Massachusetts, and Lexington is among the top 3 or 4 destinations within Massachusetts. So that makes tourism very important to Lexington. You know, no matter what happens, the beaches will always be, and we hope we'll continue to be on Cape Cod, and no one can ever take our history away. And we get travelers from all over the world coming to Lexington. Yet the tourism budget in Massachusetts is constantly in jeopardy of being unfunded or defunded. In one case, the governor zero-funded tourism, the Mass Office of Travel and Tourism. So there's been legislation proposed to establish a trust fund, if you will, sort of, so you dedicate a certain amount of money from the meals and rooms taxes to go into this trust fund that's dedicated to tourism, so that tourism planners, like the regional tourism authorities, will have a fixed budget, so they know year to year what they can count on for planning and promoting tourism. You know, they say for so much money spent, you know, the amount of money that comes back is 10, you know, 4-fold or something. Are you willing to support that initiative to make sure that we have dedicated funding for tourism? Absolutely,
absolutely. It's such a critical part of what Massachusetts is. You know, we are leaders in the nation. We led when our country was formed. We continue to lead today, and having people from other states come and see how successful we have been isn't just a boon for us financially. It's a boon for the nation educationally. To have them be able to come here and see. This is how we excel at our hospitals. This is how our universities are so great. I'd like to see tourism expanded not just to our historical sites, but to the fantastic innovations that we're doing every single day. Tourism is huge to me. I grew up, obviously, as you did, immersed in it. I still remember to this day when President Ford came here. I think your father and Dick Michelson and several other people were instrumental in getting him here. And just making Lexington the tourist capital of Massachusetts at that time. The streets were mobbed. You could barely get close.
It was a big deal.
Awesome. It was just awesome. I think
I stood there. I watched. I was 14. I was there. I was front and center. But you were going to say?
I think George Patton Jr. marched in our parade at one point as a Grand Marshal, if I'm not correct. Not the father, but the son.
I think it's he was from Massachusetts.
He was from Massachusetts.
He was from the North Shore.
He came to it.
He probably has.
Yeah. You know, these are, they have lingering effects and resonating effects.
Yeah.
I think the same is true of our educational systems. You can build tourism around our university system. You know, bring tourists in and we'll show you how MIT is so fantastic, or how Harvard is so stellar. You know, just wrap it all together. And to defund it at a state level seems ludicrous to me. It's just not something I would ever be in favor of. I'd want to see more than anything.
So you talked about veterans. You know, when I think about veterans, I think about seniors because our veterans population is aging. We've got just a couple of minutes left, so I want to sort of hit these couple of issues, then give you a chance to sort of make a final comment.
Sure.
But with the growth of sort of McMansions in Lexington, it's creating a difficult tax burden for seniors. And I do know that the towns of Lexington and Woburn have programs to help sort of alleviate some of that stress and the financial burden by sort of working it off, if you will. But I think there's got to be more than that. I mean, how do you feel about working with seniors to sort of reduce that burden here, you know, for those seniors that are actually having a financially difficult time? Because there are people who have lived here their whole lives, who have homes here, and their big houses have been built up around them, and it's causing an increase in the tax base.
Sure.
And you know, their tax burden is just really choking them. And
It's at home. It's happening to my dad,
Yeah.
my mom. You know, they still live here. They live over on Cary Ave, so my mom and dad. And they watch the show.
Yeah.
No, it's happening. McMansions are popping up all over the place, and my parents have been offered to move, and this is their home, and they want to continue to make it their home. You know, it's a difficult topic to talk about, just because I want them happy, and I don't want them to have to leave. There are many proposals that come across locally. The planning board wrestles with them all the time, and I don't have a heck of a lot of experience on the planning board. I know
Right.
they wrestle with things regularly. My desire would be to see if a proposal goes through, including senior housing, that it's followed through from A to Z, including Z being it's all senior housing. You know, too often you hear nightmares about a project coming in under the auspices of being a senior citizen project. They say then they can't find the seniors to move in, and it instantly diverts to a expensive condo for whoever wants to move in.
Right.
I'd like to take a close, hard look at that language and figure out how do we protect that and give it a little bit more long-term growth aspect for seniors to be able to move in, not just then, but let's say a senior is getting ready to move, but it might not be for a year, year and a half, 2 years. Well, we factor that in when we're making a decision on what do we do with that unit.
Sure.
And where the funding might come from to do that. As for the veterans part of it, a cute, quick story, promise quick. Our company, New Path over in Woburn, is a human services company. And every month, you know, we support people that have autism and brain injuries, and we attempt to make their lives happier, healthier, and more fulfilling. Well, every month we have a managers meeting, and every meeting has a theme. In this case, our theme was paying it forward. So we were given the assignment of going out and doing random acts of kindness. So myself and the 3 people that I was with, we went to Dunkin' Donuts and we bought coffee. We bought a box of Joe and several dozen donuts with the intention of bringing them over to the veterans and giving them to the nurses that were working over there to distribute to whoever was able to have them at the Bedford VA. Well, while I was there at the counter buying them, I struck up a conversation with a guy named Carl. He said he was a veteran. I said, well, let me buy you your cup of coffee. You're a veteran. I'm buying a coffee for a veteran. Let me start with you. And the guys that were standing with me said, you know, we can't just do it for them. Let's buy some gift cards. It grew. It just blossomed. We bought gift cards and wound up giving gift cards to the gate guards down at Hanscom Air Force Base. Then we went to the Minuteman National Park and gave gift cards to the Rangers. They in turn gave us little Deputy Ranger stickers as tchotchkes to wear for the rest of the day. It was a fantastic thing. So paying it forward mattered. And it was a big part of what I really enjoyed. But veterans were first on my mind as far as where do we go to start our paying it forward. And the VA and the veterans and the active duty guys at the gate was certainly on my mind, so they got the big
I wish
thank
we
you.
had more time to talk about all of this, because it's so interesting, and there is so much we have to do for these folks who do so much for us. But at this point, I got to ask you to sort of just kind of close it out with, sort of a final statement. Here you're having an opportunity to sort of close it out. The election is just 3 weeks away. So, you know, let the folks here in Lexington and those in Woburn who are watching this, give me your one last pitch.
Sure.
All right.
Well, as you said earlier, my name is Joe Lahiff. Folks, I'm Joe. Vote for Joe. I'm the only Joe on the ballot, please. I am asking for your vote on September 4th. I've been a lifelong resident. My wife Kelly and my 3 kids, Taylor, John, and Joey, all still live in town. I've worked here in one shape or form all my life, starting when I was very young. And I want to continue to work for the city of Lexington, the town of Lexington. It's a great community. I've gotten a lot from it, and I want to give as much as I can back to it. I'd appreciate your consideration. Typically, I like to give people my cell phone number. I don't know if that's okay with you, but
Entirely up to you, and your website.
yeah, my website's www.joelahiff.com, and feel free to call me on my cell phone if you've got questions. We didn't have a lot of time. If you've got something you want to ask me specifically, cell phone number is 781-953-9513. Call me, I'll answer. Be happy to talk over any issue you have.
Well, Joe, I want to thank you for being here. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
you know, all of the candidates are doing a great job, and I'm proud. You've been a personal friend of mine for a long time, and I'm really amazed to see how well you've developed. I mean, obviously, I never had any reservations about you as a candidate, but I see you really growing too. You say you're learning, and I think that's what these campaign experience is all about. If you're not learning, then you're doing something wrong. So,
Totally
anyway,
agree.
thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you for having
right.
me. Thank you very
Good.
much, Jim.
Thank you, Joe.